and you're being an activist. I am
That's not appropriate, sir.
Who are you with? What's your name?
That's not an appropriate question for you to ask.
You're going to ask how many questions? You get 3?
You're a stupid son of a bitch.
Welcome to another episode of Friendly Fire, a show dedicated to all things libertarian. That includes candidates for public or party office, bill reviews from a libertarian perspective, and even matters regarding the party itself. Unlike other shows, Friendly Fire exists to be critical and tough, but fair and honest. Joshua Rodriquez is the second candidate to join me out of 5 who have officially started seeking the Libertarian Party nomination for president. Delegates from all 50 states and the District of Columbia will gather in Washington, D.C. next May 24th through 26th to vote for who will represent the Libertarian Party in 2024 presidential election. Joshua joins me from Colorado, where he previously ran for Colorado's 4th Congressional District. Please welcome Joshua Rodriquez to Friendly Fire. Joshua, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely, and I'm glad to have you on this show. So let's go ahead and get started in it. You are running for the presidential nominee for the Libertarian Party. So let's just dive right in. What is your elevator pitch for the delegates? Because the way this works for people that are listening who may not know, he first has to get through the delegates. Once he gets through the delegates, then he has to get through the electorate, the nationwide. So what's your pitch for the delegates come 2024?
Yeah, that's always going to be difficult being a newcomer to the Libertarian Party. I'm a younger candidate. I'm a millennial. But I'm a longtime runner in politics. So in 2018, I ran for mayor. In 2020, I ran for United States Senate. Most recently, a congressional district seat in Colorado. But I'm a long-time nonprofit operator, over half a decade, advocating for homeless youth in my community. When 2020 hit, when the lockdowns happened and people were in need of food, my nonprofit delivered over 10,000 pounds of food to the community and many other supplies that were necessary. But I think my urge to run for politics started in 2018 after the Parkland shooting there in Florida with you. Mm-hmm. I joined my local community task force, Jefferson County School Safety and Security Task Force. And ever since then, I've been joining task force like Jefferson County Food Security Task Force during 2020. Involved myself into local community boards and commissions, those sorts of things. And so, I hope those votes do come in the long run. But I'm here because I'm a real candidate, a real person trying to fix the issues in my community. And so, running for president just seemed like the natural best step. Understanding the world around me is my goal.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about, because those were questions that are on my list, and you mentioned them straight away. So let's dive into it. The Jefferson County Integrated Food Task Force, and then that was in response to COVID-19, and then the Jefferson County School Safety and Security Task Force that preceded or followed the Parkland Florida school shooting. So tell me about those experiences, like what they did and what you did. Like what was the focus of those organizations, and then what was your role?
Yeah, I'm a nonprofit operator, so advocate for at-risk and homeless youth in my community. And so my role with relating to understanding school security and safety was evaluating with a group of folks, Columbine survivors, behavioral health specialists, educators, those sorts of things. And we were evaluating every aspect of school safety. So when folks say, how do we fix the issues related to school safety? That's something I care about, something I know a lot about. Mm-hmm. I took the major step to educate myself about the topic. But the task force related to food insecurity during the COVID lockdowns, those sorts of things, that group created the first ever 211. You call 211 in our state, and you can find free food now near you 24/7. And so those sorts of things, these types of task force, accomplish, and that's the business those task force conducted. And that's the sort of experience I have.
So your role was organizing them, or like what was your role in particular?
So for example, in 2020, when we had the opportunity, when I had the opportunity to participate in that task force, nonprofits joined forces. One of our tasks was to take this food that was basically going to be spoiled, right? Over 1 million pounds of food was delivered to each state, perishable items. And one of the tasks was, how do we get this out into the community?
Mhm.
Where do we store it? How do we connect with nonprofits and churches, those sorts of things, to get this food stored so it doesn't spoil, those sorts of things. But how do we connect with the community in a different way? Connect with the community. How do we, deliver 10,000 pounds of food to the community, those sorts of things. And so, we were, my role was to organize those types of things for my community, figure out how to reach community members where they are now, especially during lockdowns, and getting them the supplies they need.
Okay. And then what elements of those experiences can libertarians get behind? And what and I know that libertarians generally can get behind the idea of helping out your fellow man. So I mean, in the context of running for president, what parts of those experiences are relatable where libertarians, the delegates, can say, you know what, I like that?
Yeah, I think just in general, any person can go out into the community and try to figure out how they can get involved. And I think millennials like myself are huge volunteer spirited type people. But understanding those issues that are in your community is going to help every individual out. My personal experience with the COVID lockdowns, meeting people that were suffering. I had one woman ask me for feminine hygiene products. How embarrassing can that be? But those are the types of supplies that I was providing my community. Simple things like toilet paper. So from my experience from that, I would never want to see a COVID type lockdown ever again. I don't want to see mandated lockdowns by the government in general. I think that's a libertarian value. But overall, those are sorts of things that I put myself into those scenarios to really think and evaluate that. And it impacted me personally. And I think voters will appreciate my time and efforts that I put into the community. And hopefully, that experience really translates into knowledge and a vote.
Gotcha. Okay. So I did a little research, and we mentioned it already that that you've had some prior experience running for office. I know that this is going to be on the minds of the delegates, right? According to LPDA, in 2022, you initially ran as a Democrat for Colorado's 8th congressional district, then switched to Republican, and then later switched to Libertarian for Colorado's 4th congressional district. So tell me what's going on here with this switch between, well, all in 1 year, it looks like.
Yeah, so I'm a longtime independent candidate.
Mhm.
So, I helped found and work within a group of political-minded folks within the Unity Party. In 2020, I ran for United States Senate. That was huge. Black Lives Matter protests, those sorts of things. And so I withdrew my candidacy and handed my support to Chairman Sekou of the Black Panthers. I thought that was the right thing to do. But when it came time to run for a congressional district, I was trying out new parties. I wanted to be in a platform that would give me a higher amount of voice level, and I wanted to speak loudly. And so, I tried Republican, I tried Democrats, but I got one of those sour tastes, the mental taste that most people get within politics. And when I found out sharply and fast, I'm a libertarian candidate through and through. I'm an independent candidate, and I can't really associate myself with Democrats or Republicans. I think my values match Libertarian Party sharply, and it's something that I'm very passionate about.
Okay. So let me follow that up. Lincoln Chafee, I don't know if you know his name. He's a prior candidate for the Libertarian Party for presidential, and that was back in 2020. So he followed a similar path, but it was over a longer period of time. He moved similarly from Democrat to Republican to independent, and then he went back to Democrat again, and then he came to the Libertarian Party. And as a result, he was poorly received with the delegates, who were very, very skeptical of his commitment to party values. So what is it that, what's your pitch to delegates to say, this is why you should trust me, knowing that others who have come with a similar path have struggled to get that support, to get their confidence? What should the delegates know that should give them, that should inspire them?
Yeah, I think, as a millennial, I'm a young person, I'm a scientist, so I might have more values that associate with, different ideologies, whether Democrat or Republican.
Mhm.
And so I needed to speak to those voters, and specifically Democrats at the time. But the reception from the Democratic Party, what didn't match my values completely, right? You can't necessarily be a Democrat and say, hey, I believe in the Second Amendment rights to bear arms, those sorts of things, and vice versa, Republican. So my, candidacy with both didn't really spur the type of reception that I kind of wanted, from a younger candidate like myself. We need candidates in general, so that's why I stepped up. But I need to be within a party that I can trust and grow with. And I think the Libertarian Party is that party.
Okay. So let me just ask you, and I'll tell you why in just a moment here. Should citizens be able to own a fully automatic rifle?
Yeah, I often get questioned, what type of weapons, someone should own. And I think it should be unrestricted, right? So in your house, you should have an AR-15, an AK-47 with a 30-round magazine, right? And a grenade and, a bulletproof vest, unlimited.
Okay.
Your right to bear arms to protect yourself is absolutely important. Why would someone need a fully automatic weapon? That's just for the individual's right to bear arms. And so if there's a necessity for that, that's their necessity for it.
Okay, fair enough. Well, the reason I asked that is because since I brought up Lincoln Chafee, he was on Kennedy, asked the very same thing and stumbled over that. I think later he did come back out and say, all right, look, everybody can have whatever they want. But initially he stumbled. And so, hey, you're off to a better foot than he was for sure. So, so you're running for the Libertarian Party, and I get it. Sometimes people are new to the party. We even had somebody here in Jacksonville who was relatively new to the party. He got frustrated with the Republicans. He joined the Libertarian Party, and he just dove in head first and was all about it, right? So, so it's totally possible. Like, I don't want to necessarily rule somebody out. However, the delegates, they will be skeptical. So, keep that in mind as you go. But what are your top 3 priorities as a candidate for the Libertarian Party president?
Yeah, I think this is a topic that's not often talked about, and things like workers' rights, right? What's the proper age, the appropriate age for some young person to start working? What's, how long should they be allowed to work? Those sorts of things. And the issue related to wage. I think that most people don't really go down that road.
Okay.
But right now we're in a worker type shortage, right? Our young people are not entering the workforce fast enough, right? We have issues with teen suicide, youth gun violence, deaths, those sorts of things. And so now our aging population, right, within the next decade, 60% of our community, 65 plus, are going to be retired. And so workforce rights, that's going to be a huge, major topic. But it also goes right into the issues related to affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
In your home state, Florida, there's a big contentious issue with immigration, those sorts of things. So then within the Libertarian Party, just those 3 things alone are going to be major topics to talk about overall nationally. Okay.
So, you mentioned the workers' rights, and you were talking about like youth limitations on how long they can work, and what age they can work. And I've noticed that you mentioned millennial, being a millennial, excuse me, getting tongue tied here. You've mentioned being a millennial several times. So is your focus, because it almost feels like your focus is a little bit more on the younger crowd. Am I reading that vibe correctly?
Yeah, I think the millennial generation is the next generation to lead, whether you want to or not. I'm older now, so 20 years has just flew by, but my experience is something that's necessary. So moving forward, really engaging the next generation to lead is going to be so very important. I think most candidates want to reach the younger crowd. We want to really understand what's necessary for our future. As a scientist, I understand things like artificial intelligence, the use of sensors, algorithms, those sorts of things. It's something that I do and think about often in my career as a scientist. And so we do need someone like myself who's science-minded, those sorts of things. But you're really going to be speaking to the next generation and what their interests are. Well beyond a vote. I think votes are going to be important. Engaging that young community is going to be important. I think that someone like myself can really do that.
Gotcha. So what about the older crowd? Say we don't have to, we can, you know, like we always do in the culture conversations, we can skip my crowd, the Gen Xers, and we've just, you know, us Gen Xers kind of don't care. That's just kind of how we are. But in a more serious note, what about the older crowd? What's your appeal to, like, say, the Gen Xers or even the boomers who are still around to vote, and they vote in large numbers?
Yeah, you know, it's time for really those folks to, you know, not necessarily Gen Xers, but maybe the boomers to step aside and really help guide and lead and teach this younger crowd. When people ask me what's the future of the Libertarian Party, even as a millennial, I'm saying, you know, step out of the way and let Gen Zers take control of the Libertarian Party 100%. If you see a Gen Z pop up their head and say, hey, I want to run the Libertarian Party of Jacksonville, you know, step aside, guide them, teach them, and let's just see what they do. How do you engage libertarians to the party to grow, right? Mm-hmm. You hand it over to the next generation. And I think that's one of those things that we're lacking right now, with especially within the Libertarian Party and candidates. It's that squabble for leadership. And it's really just handing the torch, right? The libertarian torch down on fire.
Right.
But we don't know. With social media, those sorts of things, it gets pretty chaotic. And so folks like boomers, when I was being raised, computers was one of those things that was absolutely important. And so I was basically handed a computer, here you go. You know, fast forward over a decade, 20 years later, now computers have changed and advanced, right? In a different way. And so, you know, getting that vote, I think it's something that I would be able to accomplish. But, you know, we have to treat each generation differently. Maybe a millennial Gen Xers are the next leaders, and we have our boomers really just on the sideline, but, you know, really teaching and mentoring the next generation. And basically that's my goal. How do we teach and mentor the next generation and become leaders and, you know, really hand down that torch appropriately?
Okay. So I don't necessarily disagree with this notion when you're talking about leadership. And I've spoken in the past about, hey, if you're older, you need to be working to raise up the newer, younger generation and lead them. However, you are a candidate for president and you're going to be looking to get votes. So what I'm not really hearing, because look, my dad, he is in the boomer crowd, and he is not a libertarian. So I'm knowing what I know of my dad, and I know him pretty well. I don't think an answer of you need to step aside and let the new younger generation come in and start running the show is an answer, or I don't think that's going to convince him to vote for you. Let's say that you get the nomination. So what is the call to him? What is the call to action to vote for somebody like you who seems very focused on the younger crowd? What is it, you know, effectively, what's in it for him? Because he has to give you his vote along with many others.
Yeah, we live in a very complex world, right? And so when I say I'm a scientist, science-minded person, you know, life is changing in a different way. That's why I spoke about how computers were something that were supposed to be important, but how do we use them? And so having a candidate like myself, you know, be able to understand how do we even really work at the municipality level with sensors, automating travel and traffic, you know, mass transportation, housing, jobs. How do we innovate shipping and, you know, cargo and, you know, our imports, right? Nationally and worldwide, you know, what's the next step for our generation? that's something I overeducated myself with. That's why I spoke about my experience within government in my community. It makes me a leader. It makes me prepared. And so for that generation above, I'm speaking to you right now. I need and want the opportunity to lead. I'm ready for it. Millennials like myself are engaged. And it's our time now. But we're going to need your support and vote 100%.
Okay. So we'll move on from that. I'm not so sure that I'm personally convinced, but who knows? Maybe others are, and that's fine. So let's move on. And I've got a question here. So, we kind of talked about the delegates, and we started getting into the electorate, the non-libertarian voters, or at least those outside of the party that are involved in getting that nomination initially. So after that, what is the appeal for non-libertarian, just in general? Like, right, you get let's say you get an opportunity on CNN and you get like 30 seconds or what have you, right? What is your message to just like they're hearing from maybe the libertarian candidate for the first time? What's your pitch to them to at least be interested? Is it something different than what you said?
Probably not entirely, but just understanding that 50% of our community and every community across the nation right now is independent, and so I think that we need to start talking about those small time, home time values. A lot of people, they don't really immerse themselves in national and worldwide politics and more. As a libertarian president, my intention is to end war. But as a scientist, I want to end war and cure cancer, those sorts of things. And so my motivations as a libertarian candidate might be entirely different than most candidates. I say it, but I also want to do it. I have a passion for it. And so those are the types of things when I want to speak to a voter and engage them. I want to look at the future and I want to change it in a different way. It's not naive to say that I really do want to see world peace. I want to bring our communities together. I want to bring our nation. I want to bring our world together. And so those sorts of things I care about, I'm passionate about. I have a history of community involvement, and it's something that I enjoy.
Gotcha. We are 1 year past what was called the Reno Reset. That's where the LNC, the Libertarian National Committee, changed leadership dramatically, along with many other state parties. And this change went from what one might call the old guard to the Mises Caucus, the Mises Caucus being a very large caucus that mobilized and kind of swept a lot of elections internally. So how does that change in leadership and direction help or harm your run for presidency when it comes to the electorate?
I'm not sure how it would help or harm my candidacy. I think overall the Libertarian Party has a lot of work to do internally. When you have a candidate like myself, it's important to let them have a voice, let them be free, let them engage the community how they see fit, whether it answers the question to the Libertarian Party policy and values entirely. Because, like you said, that's changed. It's within a year, it's changed. Locally, every Libertarian Party has their own values. Even as yourself, you're going to have a different value and an opinion about my candidacy or other candidates. And so that impacts our campaigns internally. And so we really need to understand that we can't hinder the process. I know that change has happened, but don't hinder the candidacies, those involvements. I think, parties want to see more candidates involve themselves with party politics. But at the same time, candidates need 100% support from the party. They're not necessarily going to have time to, hit all the check marks that each, area of the country might want. But we just need to put ourselves forward and really just be faithful in our candidates that are out there. It's going to be hard. The change is hard. Everyone's going to have a different idea. It's scary. We talked about how Democrats, lose faith within their party, and Republicans lose faith within their party, and then they go run as a libertarian candidate, and then those candidates end up squabbling within the party because now they're made up of green, yellow, red, blue, and it gets a little crazy. But I just want to tell people, when it comes for the holidays, right? Election season, the family comes together and we will be able to eat Thanksgiving dinner as a family and cooperate and get things done. We're a Libertarian Party. We have to move forward, and we need to do it in an honest and good way.
Okay. What has the reception been so far in your own state and your own local affiliate? Are you involved in the state and the local affiliate?
Yeah, I'm involved in politics greatly. When I spoke about the Unity Party, that was just a small time third candidacy party, and it grew nationwide. And so you basically, have developed relationships with all different types of political figures and people like yourself constantly. The Libertarian Party of Colorado, it's unique. It's within a state that's highly Democratic, so it's contentious. But when you think about how Republicans don't feel like spending money or their dollar in a race that they can't win, the Libertarian Party has a power because you're able to speak to independent voters. And so those party politics are going to be highly important, and it's important that we all stay strong and stick together.
All right, but how is your reception? Excuse me. How has your respect? Goodness, I seem to be unable to talk today, folks. I'm sorry. How has your reception been so far with your state and maybe your local affiliate? Have they received you pretty well? Do you feel like you've got their support? Because a moment ago you were saying, hey, look, we need to be behind our candidates. And obviously the first place that I would look to is to see, what's going on in your local affiliate. Where are you? Which I assume you're in the Arvada area. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, Denver, within Denver metro area. So it's important to know that parties don't really hand out endorsements, those sorts of things. We have a lot of candidates still to run in general, and so we're going to be looking towards the end of November to really get party acceptance. And then into January, into the next year. I'm a candidate, like a couple others have ran very, very early. And so I won't necessarily get full support and endorsement from, our local leaders or even nationally. But that's why folks like myself are putting our step forward and going on to shows like this to really have a voice and really meet folks like yourself and gear up for those high profile debates that are going to be coming up soon.
Okay. Now this is a big one that does affect the electorate, but it is kind of internal to the Libertarian Party. What is the purpose of the president and vice president candidates? Is it for winning elections or spreading a message?
Yeah, I think that question comes up a lot in debates because, a lot of folks within the Libertarian Party are really focused on the dollar. You have to have millions and millions of dollars to run a campaign and to win. If we're going to spend $24 for each vote, that would be like billions of dollars just to win an election. So, those figures are not going to be realistic. But I have a gold medal in my mind. In my mind, I win not only within the convention, but the president of the United States. And so that's where my mindset is right now. And I think each candidate needs to have that mindset. Otherwise, you're going to lose focus. It's not necessarily about spreading a message. It's about winning. As someone like myself, I want to see change.
Okay, so your goal is to win. How confident are you? And maybe this is an unfair question to ask because, why would you say I'm not very confident, right? But let's just see where you go with it. How confident are you in your ability to win if you receive the nomination?
Yeah, I think people like myself are going to vote, right? I'm a millennial scientist. I'm going to speak my mind. I'm going to try to speak to truth, speak from experience. And I think people are going to receive that fairly well. And so, like I said, majority of our folks right now that are voters are independent voters. And so, within the Democratic Party, they're going to squabble. Within the Republican Party, they're squabble. And so, that's a strong step to shine. And so places like New York, where it's democratically ran, independent candidates are going to pop up. We're going to be huge contenders in those states like Georgia, huge contenders. States like Utah, independent candidate won, their state for president in 2020 with Hillary and Trump, I believe. And so it's hugely possible. I have the mindset and focus to get it accomplished, and so I'm very hopeful.
Okay, awesome. So it's definitely sounds like winning. That's good. We're talking about the electorate, and for whatever reason, folks, today is not my day to speak. So I will try to be a little bit more clear, but I keep getting tongue tied. I'm not sure what's going on with that. At any rate, I when I was kind of out doing a little bit of research, I noticed that your Twitter account is protected. So as a presidential candidate or somebody seeking the presidential nominee, um, how does that strategy instill confidence in delegates or voters who are very active on Twitter? Because I was a little surprised by that, and and that tends to suggest a great many things to different people. So, what's going on here? Why do we have a protected account as a presidential candidate?
Yeah, I think Elon Musk protected his account at one point in time, and so I have a mindset of branding myself as a candidate, a true person that really believes in people. And so I'm not one of those candidates that are here for fortune and fame, right? And so you're like, why would someone who's trying to garner votes and gain political attention lock their account? You know, hey, my voice matters. If someone really wants to listen to what I'm saying on Twitter, definitely, give me a follow request and I'll just automatically accept you. But, I'm not here to be like this audacious public figure who's just trying to like steal the limelight. So it's my effort just to run as a candidate and just really just let people know, I want to have a voice. That's why I'm publicly on these types of events, but at the same time, it's like a branding tactic almost. And so, we'll see where it goes. Those sorts of things, I want to see who's watching and listening and also. And so, Twitter is very active. It's hugely important platform. And I think that people are definitely curious, those sorts of things that, I'm saying and doing within social media. So following is kind of like one of those important things. But you can find me, you can follow.
I mean, and I did, and and then you accepted it, and now I can see your tweets, and that's fine. And it's not really to suggest any idea of fame, but there's going to be roughly 1,000 delegates, and you're not going to be able to necessarily have a conversation like this with 1,000 delegates. And as much as I would love to have all 1,000 delegates watch my show, that is simply not the case. So a lot of them are going to be coming and looking to see what they can find, specifically from your own mouth, right? Or, effectively, which would be like your Twitter account. I did not look to see if you have a Facebook account, and I know that you have a website. So, I was really curious about that because like, if I didn't have a show and I was just curious, I might click on your profile and say, well, how am I supposed to know who this guy is that maybe wants my vote, right? So anyway, something to think about there. So what other kind of things have I not asked? And I tried to listen to some of the other shows that you were on, like Larry Sharp and some other ones. So hopefully I didn't quite listen to everything, but hopefully, at least I'm throwing some new questions at you. But is there anything that we should discuss that maybe I didn't think about so far?
It's really hard to know. A lot of those shows I went in depth with one show in particular. It was like an hour and a half. I think we just talked about absolutely everything. But as a scientist, future issues related to energy, those sorts of things. So a lot of people think fossil fuels are the way to go, right? And so we have like hydrogen powered vehicles as options, but even something simple as ethanol, right? Venezuela is 100% ethanol, right? Much cleaner burning type gas. It's basically race gas, right? You can tune your vehicles to higher horsepower, more efficient, cleaner burning for your engine and for the atmosphere. And that's corn. That's not even like a renewable resource necessarily, where people are like, oh, how are you going to get more of this resource, like hydrogen powered, rockets and those sorts of things.
Right.
So I think when we think future legislation, when we think of future of economics and power and energy, having someone science-minded like myself, that was a huge topic. What's the importance of Blue Origin and their space station, right? They want to have a international space station that's commercial, so companies can come and do experiments, in real time without having to deal with NASA or those sorts of things. But it's a stepping stone towards mining the moon. Really getting at the moon for hydrogen, right? Super fuels and those sorts of energy type, resources. And so you're not going to get that with, any other candidate but myself. I think that's an important topic that, sometimes as libertarians, we forget or don't even talk about very much.
Gotcha. So let's kind of explore, if you don't mind. You mentioned scientists multiple times. So what is the appeal in terms of, I'm a scientist, I'm also running for president. How does being a scientist contribute not only to the role of president, but also one as a libertarian?
Yeah, I think libertarian changes, right? That's why I said hand the torch to a Gen Z. Obviously, Gen Zs can't run for president. They're not older, so the millennials
Right.
gonna have to step up and take those positions and really, lead. But the future is out there, and so when we think of future technology, you're gonna need someone that understands data, understands research in a different way. When we think about abolishing the FDA, that's a huge topic. It's easier said than done. I think libertarians are like, let's just do it. Let's just get it done. Let's just do it tomorrow. What does that mean? How do we get it done? What's the impact, right? And so you have to have someone who understands science. And so for me, you're not going to be able to say, hey, we're going to need to find somebody. No, I do it. I get it done. I understand it, right? Those sorts of issues. And I think from a libertarian perspective, that's hugely important. When we think about war spending, how we spend money effectively to secure our borders, right? Domestically, how do we secure our nation? Science topics are going to be hugely important. And so I think like 90% of our military is running on fossil fuels. What the future might be for powering our military, that's going to be a huge thing. Things like Space Force, right? A space station just went up by China. What does that mean? Are they able to spy on the United States? Are they building a nuclear weapon that they can just drop from outer space? Those things are hugely concerning. And so understanding those sorts of topics is quite different. Just even me talking about right now, it probably hasn't been talked about very much by a candidate because they just don't understand it.
Gotcha. AI, does it concern you?
I think it's one of those things that's fairly beautiful. I remember a ghostwriter on TikTok created, a song that was AI generated with Drake's voice that just went super viral. Drake's new song, my daughter, came in from high school saying, "Oh, did you hear Drake's new song?" And it was AI generated, right? And it got booted off absolutely everything. And it, for Drake, it's probably like, Jesus, like that was really stressful and dangerous, right? I think of like AI being incorporated into TikTok, how you just do and say one thing, and now the system is teaching our kids what it wants to know in a fast. But Facebook right now is all AI driven, and so everything we see and do on Facebook is AI, and so I think we need to see where it goes. It could be dangerous, but at this point, I'm excited about it. I think we need to let it be free. Corporations, they do have to be very on high alert, putting any proprietary information into an AI system, because that's the goal of AI right now. You put your questions and answers in it, and those companies are capturing your IP address, your ideas, your inputs, and so now that's more data that they have that they could be used against you for advertising and whatnot. And so as consumers, we do have to be very careful about how we use it ourselves. But I think it should be a free system, and let's see where it goes.
Gotcha. All right. And I actually will follow up with the comment about AI being or Facebook being AI driven. I actually speculated just recently that I think all social media is AI driven. I think a lot of the quirks that we're seeing where somebody is getting, somebody randomly seems to get their account disabled, or they get dinged for a particular tweet or a post and it maybe doesn't really make sense. I think those are where AI is making some mistakes. And I say AI, not the algorithms of old, but now like an entirely new system. So I kind of believe that all social media is driven and moderated pretty much mostly, if not entirely, by AI. I could be wrong. I'm not in those companies, so I wouldn't really know for sure. But
Yeah.
there's stuff out there.
Yeah, I've been working with a company that deals with quantum computers, and so one of the major thing is algorithms, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get this algorithm to work where you put inputs in and it can crunch out data like in an amazing way? My mind goes towards the government, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are they connecting with social media entities and Google and these high profile billion-dollar corporations with so much users and data? They have the power to examine information. They have the algorithms built already, and they're using these systems in a way where it could be really scary. And so you're seeing these glitches and those sorts of things. But when the IRS comes knocking on your door because you didn't report that $600 on your Cash App, those sorts of things,
Mm-hmm.
all that data is being collected. It's been being collected for a very long time, and they're just not having a chance to use it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
now they're starting to use it, and they're using it in a different way. It definitely is scary, but they have the extreme power to do so.
Right. All right. I got two final quick questions. You can just give the shortest answer that you can possibly give if you want. Borders, open or closed?
Open borders.
Okay. And Ukraine, should we be funding them or not?
Unfortunately, we should not be funding Ukraine.
Okay. Well, I know that there'll be plenty of delegates that'll enjoy hearing all those answers. So I'm going to wrap things up and just kind of give you the floor. Give us your final pitch for people.
I'm a candidate that speaks from the heart, speaks from the truth, speaks from knowledge. And so I just want folks to understand that when I'm running for president of the United States, I'm doing it because I care about people. I care about our community. And, my goal is to really grab this power from those bureaucrats from the government and really hand it back to the community. And so I'm about abolish law enforcement. I want to end the IRS. I want to give our communities a chance to lead and be the people who they want to be, independent with liberty. So I'm Joshua Rodriquez. I'm running for Libertarian candidate for president in 2024. And, I'm one of those candidates with experience, leadership, and I want to move us forward in a new vision and a new way. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on, Joshua. Hang backstage if you want, or if you disappear, that's fine too. Let me go ahead and close out the show really quickly here. Folks, I want to thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you got a lot out. Obviously, it's way too early to be deciding who's going to be the nominee for the presidential, for the Libertarian Party's president pick. But I want you to keep watching, and hopefully I will bring on some of the other candidates as well, and we will talk to them. And then before we know it, May of next year will be here, and we will be able to vote up in Washington, D.C. But for now, that's all for now. Find other episodes at libertydad.com, archived video episodes at youtube.libertydad.com. You can also connect with me at Liberty Dad, all one word, on Facebook, Liberty Dad Pod on Twitter, or send me an email, go old fashioned, libertydadpodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. And remember, if you are a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product